Marble steps are cool at dawn. Olive leaves still hold the night. Smoke is curling slow and thin. Names I whisper to the light. Sing, oh, sing to the stones and sky. Let the old words rise. Let the old words rise. Feet on earth and eyes held high.
So folkens, welcome back to another video. We are heading into how Caligula took power. Let's go.
Caligula, a name that evokes the worst aspects of autocratic despotism. For centuries, its mere utterance has conjured up lurid images of excess, corruption, incompetence, and insanity. But who was this man really? And why do we associate him with the worst of history's notable figures? Was he really an insane megalomaniac? Or is that merely a biased picture, painted by the sources that have come down to us? We'll explore all of this and more in today's episode, as Gaius Caesar succeeds Tiberius and gives way to one of the most dramatized imperial reigns in the history of the Roman Empire. To boots, Gaius Caesar Augustus Germanicus was the third child of Germanicus and his wife Agrippina, making him the grandson of Mark Antony and Marcus Agrippa, and the great-grandson of Augustus. Born in 12 CE, Gaius entered a relatively stable Roman world, despite the uncertainties that had emerged at the end of Augustus's tenure as emperor. According to the Roman historian Suetonius, he quickly became popular with the soldiery after his mother commissioned a soldier's outfit for him to play in, making him a mascot for the military, and giving him the nickname of Caligula, after the miniature military shoes he wore. However, it is unclear whether this story is true. At the time of the legionaries' mutiny of 14 CE, Gaius would have been barely 2 years old, and his family had been sent north for Germanicus's governorship with 2 doctors, suggesting the boy had severe medical issues after birth and weaning. Furthermore, while Germanicus was respected, he did not enjoy the wild popularity with the soldiery he had after the success of his campaigns in Germania, as evidenced by his inability to put down the mutiny of 14 CE without partially acceding to their demands. Conversely, it could have also been a way the soldiers endeared themselves to the sick child of Germanicus, making him their mascot and rooting for his survival. It has been hypothesized that Gaius suffered from some form of traumatic brain injury, which included epilepsy, an injury which many soldiers themselves must have been able to relate to. Despite modern preconceptions, there was no reason to believe that Gaius would be incapable as an emperor. Raised by Germanicus and Agrippina, both powerful and politically savvy figures in the Roman state, Gaius was in capable hands. Already at age 6, he gave his first public speech at Assos in 18 CE, during Germanicus's tour of the East. His time spent in—
Damn. Yo, what did you do when you were 6 years old? I did definitely not hold speeches to people. Damn.
military camps made him popular with the soldiers, regardless of the truth of Suetonius' story, helping him garner widespread support. To the people of Rome, who had twice been denied the family of Drusus being handed the reins of power, Gaius' accession was worthy of jubilation. For the people of Rome, the man entering the role of princeps was the virtuous child who had stood before them on Germanicus' chariot in 17 CE. While Gaius had been thrust into the public eye early in his life, unlike Nero and Drusus, he was not set upon the path of advancement that Augustus had required of his heirs in preparation for taking the public stage. Thus, Gaius would become the first princeps.
See, Caligula was young and attractive, which to the superstitious masses herald good virtue and competent governance, in contrast to Tiberius, whose facial conditions compounded by his stern and Paulius' demeanor made it easy to associate him with tyrannical behavior. Wow. Damn.
To break the veneer of republicanism, which had been weakening ever since the death of Julius Caesar. The chaos of Gaius's youth certainly traumatized the man who later assumed the principate. At the age of 7, his father Germanicus died, with allegations of poisoning surrounding his death. At 11, his uncle and the son of Tiberius Drusus was murdered by Sejanus, which was then followed by the arrest of his mother Agrippina and his eldest brother Nero at the age of 14 in 27 CE. While Gaius had been shielded by his youth up until this point, he no longer had the power of his father's house or Agrippina's political network to protect him. Gaius and his younger sisters were taken into the house of Augustus's widow and their great-grandmother, the powerful Livia Drusilla, where he was raised until she died in 29 CE, where Gaius gave a public oration at her funeral. From there, he was moved to the house of his grandmother, Antonia the Younger, who sheltered him as he approached the age of majority of 18 years, and became a target for Sejanus. In October of 30 CE, after the imprisonment of Gaius's last brother Drusus, Antonia was summoned to Capri with Gaius and her granddaughters for safety. By this time, Tiberius had discovered Sejanus's machinations and was beginning his counterplay, intending to leverage public fervor for the heirs of Germanicus against Sejanus if his ploy should fail. If Gaius had learned one thing from his tumultuous youth, it was how to tiptoe around the shoes of power. Gaius would learn to master the art of intrigue and to navigate the complex familial and political relationships of the House of Augustus on Capri. During his stay on Capri, Gaius presented himself as reserved, forced to elicit the utmost tact and obscure his intentions with platitudes. He was forced to ignore the execution of his mother and brother, and
Whoa. Let's see. While historian Suetonius uses Caligula's presence at executions to extraordinary something. I don't know what this is. His characterization as a cruel, nurtured man. The reality is that Caligula was simply required to be there so he could be kept under observation and removed by Tiberius if he reacted incorrectly.
allow affront to his person to pass over him with indifference. Or at least that's how the historians Tacitus and Suetonius describe him after the fact, a characterization that would certainly have drawn Tiberius's ire and led to his death. The Jewish historian Philo of Alexandria, who met Gaius twice, offers a much more insightful appraisal, stating that Gaius was skilled in discerning a man's intentions from their open countenance. While often portrayed as a den of sexual depravity for the mad Emperor Tiberius, Capri offered much more diverse experiences than that. Many of Tiberius's close political allies and friends who shared his passion for mysticism came to the island, and therefore Gaius was able to learn how the levers of power were pushed and pulled amidst this throng of confidants. Still, his position was precarious, as Tiberius favored his young grandson Tiberius Gemellus to succeed, even though he was not quite ready, and the confidants of Tiberius had been the enemies of Agrippina. The danger was certainly ever present. Julius Agrippa, a grandson of Herod the Great, raised in the house of Antonia Minor in Rome, was invited to accompany Tiberius Gemellus on his excursions, but instead began a friendship with Gaius. Allegedly, Agrippa stated in confidence that he wished.
The historian Sophus also tells us that Caligula took part in the series of learning on Capri and was a first-rate orator and extremely well educated, also following in many of the scholarly pursuits of Tiberius.
Gaius to succeed as soon as possible, with only the carriage driver overhearing them, who reported this to Tiberius to escape punishment. Learning of this, Tiberius had Agrippa arrested and led away in chains, while Gaius escaped punishment through his tactful evasion of a response. Savvy earned him no favor with Tiberius, but neither did it draw his ire. While Tiberius preferred Gemellus and remained in good health, his age was advanced, and necessity demanded that he prepare Gaius for the office of Princeps. In 33 CE, Tiberius appointed Gaius to the post of quaestor, granted him eligibility for other senatorial offices, and married him to Junia Claudilla, the daughter of respected ex-consul Marcus Junius Silanus, who had joined Tiberius's inner circle and earned the right to cast his vote first. Despite these positive signals, it was clear he had been given the back seat. Unlike his brothers, Gaius was not married to one of his cousins. Tiberius's creation of intrafamilial and interfamilial bonds was structured so that none of the betrothed could gain precedence over Gemellus. While Gaius was appointed to religious offices, he was not advanced up the cursus honorum by Tiberius, and with the creation of his will in 35 CE, Tiberius left the question of the succession open by stating the imperial estate would be divided equally between Gaius and Gemellus. Instead, the short-lived marriage to Junia Claudilla, who died in childbirth, would prove to be Gaius's path to the throne. Either during or after this marriage to Junia, Gaius began an affair with the wife of Macro, who allegedly allowed the arrangement. While painted as sexual in nature, the actual arrangement appears to have been one of carefully constructing the political foundations for Gaius's elevation to the principate. Ennia was typically with Gaius on Capri, and could easily act as the interlocutor between him and Macro, who built alliances with the Senate in Rome, anticipating the reward of considerable advancement for herself and her husband if they succeeded. As mentioned previously, there's no reason to actually suspect the involvement of Gaius, Ennia, and Macro in the death of Tiberius. His will was rushed to Rome, where it was read before the Senate on the 18th of March, and then subsequently declared void. Meanwhile, Gaius proceeded to the city in mourning, with the other surviving relatives of Tiberius, where he was regaled along the route from Misenum by the people of Italy, who hailed him as their exoptatissimus princeps, or most earnestly desired emperor. Upon setting foot in Rome, the city erupted in celebration, as the heir of Drusus and Germanicus finally took the reins of power, holding games, sacrifices, and festivals for 3 months. Entering the Senate chamber on the 28th of March 37 CE, he was granted the right and power to decide all affairs. At a subsequent session of the Senate, the new princeps gave his first public speech, promising to put an end to the Maestus trials, freeing all those imprisoned or exiled, and ordering the documents used for the accusations publicly burned in the Forum. He then set about to the problem of commemorating Tiberius with the proper reverence, while carefully stepping around the toes of public and aristocratic sentiments, first sending a letter to the Senate requesting Tiberius be granted all the honors given to Augustus and deified, before arriving in the chambers to find them undecided. Perhaps most fittingly, Gaius left the matter there. Moving forward with the public funeral, where Tiberius was interred in the mausoleum of Augustus, Gaius placed himself in the tradition of Augustus, Drusus, and Germanicus in his public funerary oration. His disbursement of funds from Tiberius's and Livia Drusilla's wills, the latter of which had been left unfulfilled for the past 8 years, combined with his own contributions, immediately left a lasting impression of generosity in the minds of the soldiers and the urban plebs, which helped cement his newfound popularity. He then took a further step, sailing across the sea to Pandateria and Pontia, where Agrippina and Nero had been exiled and interred, taking them back through the streets of Rome, emulating a triumph, as their urns were carried to their new final resting place in the mausoleum of Augustus. He then set about securing power within his own family, elevating his grandmother, Antonia Minor, to the title of Augusta, and placing her in a similar position as Livia Drusilla, nominating his uncle Claudius as co-consul, granting privileges to his sisters, and adopting Tiberius Gemellus and elevating him to Princeps Juventutis, placing him properly on the ladder to political office. He then tactfully followed in the footsteps of Augustus and Tiberius by renouncing the honors heaped upon him, delaying his taking of the consulship so that the senators holding the office would not be diminished by having to relinquish it, and ending Tiberius's practice of communicating through letters, which had gained the force of imperial decree. Turning then to his religious role, Gaius used his brief consulship to complete the temple of Augustus, and held games and festivals of unprecedented scale, cementing his position as Rome's religious figurehead in the model set
Interesting.
by Augustus before him. This resumption of the civilitas of Augustus returned the Senate to the ambiguity
Wonder what happened to him, because like for now he has done a pretty good job. Like you can say that I wouldn't say that his early years like under Tiberius rule was slimy, because it's mainly like survival. Like it is what it is. Like it's survival. Like it's the same with like the monarchies of the medieval age. Like if you overstep, you're dead.
of his reign, where his unassuming, humble performance as princeps maintained the political balance. Yet he remained unmistakably backed by the military and unparalleled in his personal wealth, through which he imposed obligations on senators and citizens by his generosity. The end of October 37 CE saw the first crisis of Gaius's tenure as princeps, as he himself fell gravely ill, leaving the principate itself in crisis. If Gaius perished, Tiberius Gemellus was technically still too young to succeed, but Macro and Silanus quickly backed the young heir to the throne. Gaius, still deathly ill, countered by appointing his sister Drusilla the inheritor of the imperial position and estates, making her husband, Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, his direct successor. However, Gaius recovered, and now was faced with no other choice than to have the young Tiberius Gemellus removed as a threat, followed by Macro and Silanus. First, he accused Gemellus of plotting against his person and attempting to profit from it, an accusation which was, to some degree, true. Consequently, he had Praetorians dispatched to force him to commit suicide. This significantly weakened
The historian and diplomat Peleo recounts the sad scene where Gemellus, completely unfamiliar with military affairs, had to be instructed how to fall upon his sword and assisted in his suicide. Damn. Whew.
Macro, Ennia, and Silanus, who were then easily removed. In a masterstroke of politics, Macro was appointed prefect of Egypt, allowing him to be replaced once again by two Praetorian prefects, as the guard had been commanded under Augustus, weakening the position significantly. Now, with the Praetorian Guard secured in its loyalty, Gaius had Macro accused of plotting against him, and both he and his supporters were tried and executed.
Damn. Either he's about to get pretty insane, or this is a really dirty circle he's in.
Silanus was next in
Might be a bit of both.
line, and Gaius began ridiculing him and reorganizing the voting order, so Silanus was no longer first in line, humiliating him. Silanus, who had seen how under Tiberius this would lead to devious senators bringing false charges against him, preemptively committed suicide, eliminating the last of Gaius's major rivals.
Yeah, I think it was Siana's trial. It was pretty scuffed.
While many historians have seen this as the beginning of his tyranny, contemporary authors such as Philo, who knew Gaius personally and was highly critical of him, recognized it as a necessity in the immediate aftermath of a succession crisis. Either Gaius and his family removed the threat, or they themselves would be removed.
I mean, that is true. Like, I don't know. Like, I hammer a lot on the psychotic nature of medieval kings, but with like how you need to like have baby steps around them to make sure you don't overstep. But then on the other hand, like how many civil wars has there been in Europe and in the world where somebody becomes a bit too powerful and then decides to overthrow the king? It's a scuffed system. It sucks. It's a bad system, honestly.
Upon his recovery, Gaius once again set about ensuring the imperial succession, choosing for himself a second bride in Livia Arestilla. Allegedly, she was betrothed to Gaius Calpurnius Piso, but upon her wedding day, Gaius abducted her in the fashion of Romulus and Augustus before him. However, historian Alois Winterling thinks this tale was exactly that, a topos meant to
The Abel Bithynian were a college of priests who presided over sacrifices and rituals directed towards the household gods Lares and bountiful harvests. The order was received under Augustus and appointment to it was prestigious, singling imperial favor.
Emulate Romulus and Augustus's actions, and that Calpurnius Piso's admission to the Arvel Brethren in May of 38 CE suggests he had consented to the arrangement.
Was Romulus?
However, Livia had remained faithful.
One of the was it Romulus and Remus that was the founder of Rome, I think. I saw that I remember that from oversimplified. Yeah, Romulus. That's why it's called Rome.
To her chosen husband, Piso, and her repeated unauthorized contact with him led to Gaius divorcing her, as she could not bear legitimate heirs. With the marriage annulled, Gaius was forced to turn to other solutions to maintain his position for the time being.
Okay.
While the air of republicanism had long been upheld under Augustus and Tiberius, the practice of republicanism had waned, as elections and appointments had been moved from the popular assemblies to the Senate chambers, placing more power in the hands of the patrician families, while removing costly and burdensome campaigning expenditures, and also turning the many uncontested elections into de facto appointments by the princeps. Gaius masterfully leveraged Augustan republicanism to his advantage, appeasing the Senate, weakening its aristocracy, and building popular support, all under the guise of adhering to the Mos Maiorum. Rescinding Tiberius's ban on historical writings appealed to their desire to expunge Tiberius's legacy, while simultaneously allowing the unscrupulous behavior of the many senators to be publicized. Auditing the equestrians allowed him to remove unpopular members and potential political rivals, while simultaneously rebuilding its ranks with new members from the provinces, who now owed him their support, all while weakening the Italian plutocracy. Restoring the collegia and lifting the sales tax greatly benefited the plebs, while weakening the economic power of the senatorial class. Reintroducing elections garnered popular support, while impeding the Senate's efforts to control its own appointments. While he was later forced to overturn this act, it shows his masterful outmaneuvering of the Senate, as they were unable to oppose him, lest they themselves be accused of opposing the Mos Maiorum, and exposing their own selective glorification of Roman tradition. On the other side of the Roman political arena, in the private affairs of households, Gaius both dominated and drew ire. His extravagant spending included expanding both his own palace and the adjoining estates, where the uppermost strata of Roman aristocratic society could dwell alongside him, building harbors and villas, massive ships the likes of which the world had never seen, and also extraordinary banquets, races, and games that put any other republican families to shame. In all of this, however, Gaius rejected much of the ceremony and formality that dictated Roman private and household affairs, elevating his sisters above his wife at banquets, and ignoring the traditional salutatio and the ways guests' social and political status dictated their quarters and their position while dining. He affiliated himself with those who held the status of humiliores.
In Roman society, one's reputation was classified as either honestor or humilior, which related closely with the relatability of their testimony in court. Humilior were subject to harsher punishment under the law, and particularly professions were reviewed similarly to how circus carnies were looked down upon in the 19th and 20th centuries. Okay.
Which was not necessarily a problem, but his association with those deemed completely disreputable, like dancers, musicians, and charioteers, left a sour taste in most senators' mouths. This incongruity between his status and role in Roman society and his flaunting of Roman tradition would only continue to exacerbate the cracks in Caligula's reign, as in June of 38 CE, his favorite sister Drusilla died, and Gaius suffered his first nervous breakdown. Next time, we'll delve into the Mad Emperor and the crisis of Caligula's tyranny. If you don't want to miss that and many other historical videos, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them.
Damn. Alright. Oh, just had somebody who come by quickly, so I had to run quick. Yeah. I mean, Caligula doesn't seem to be that bad yet. That might change. So I think I'm gonna find another video to go a bit more into depth with his later years, because the next video is under paywall, so don't think I should check out videos that's under paywall. So yeah. So yeah. The original video will be down in the description, guys. If you guys want to check out some more history videos, I'll have a playlist up on the screen. Otherwise, see you guys then. Bye.
Bare feet in the furrowed ground, dust on my tongue, heat bearing down, sun like a hammer on my back, name I was born with, they took that. But my chains float soft like water, running through this tired soul. You can bind my hands together, you can't cage what rivers know.